Hey guys, it's Jeremy here on Metal Music Meltdown, back with another video. What do you have for you today, guys, is the next installment of my top 10 albums of each year. We're up to 1991. A pretty solid year, not quite as strong as 1990 in terms of metal, but a little spoiler alert. 91, 92 was around the time I started getting into music, around the age of 11 or 12. Based on my age, when I came into music, obviously the rock sound really gravitated towards me. And at the time, what you saw in Canada, Much Music or on the radio was alternative rock and grunge. And I have no apologies. I loved it at the time. I still do. That was my first exposure to heavier music that I really enjoyed. And it wasn't until my 17, 18 years old, I got into metal more. And then as I've gotten older, my tastes have gotten a little heavier. But I still listen to grunge all the time, the old bands from the 90s and alternative music. I don't give a shit. I think it's amazing. Metalheads always bash on grunge bands for killing metal, but sorry guys, I wasn't here before that when metal was around in its heyday in the 80s. So I loved grunge, I still do. And yeah, I still listen to it all the time. So a little spoiler alert, you will see a couple classic grunge albums in this list. And starting at number 10 is just one of those albums. It's Pearl Jam 10, the debut album from Pearl Jam. It's my favorite album by them. Probably one of my top 100 albums of all time. With songs like Even Flow, Alive, Jeremy, Black, Once. Top to bottom, I love this record. It's really strong, and I still listen to it all the time. At number 9, I went with Overkill, Horoscope. It's their fifth studio album from New Jersey Thrashers. Really solid stuff. I love this album. One of their really strong albums with songs like Coma, Horoscope, the title track, and Infectious. Really solid stuff. Overkill is one of those bands that's really consistent and never really put out a bad album. At number 8, I have Heathen with Victims of Deception. A really underrated thrash band. It's their second studio album. Always love these guys. I still have to grab some of their stuff in physical copy. It's one of those bands that's hard to find a decent price on the CDs, but really good stuff. Standard tracks would be Heathen song, Hypnotized, and Fear of the Unknown. Really good stuff. Definitely check them out. And at number 7, I have Soundgarden, Badmotorfinger, another band that was lumped into the grunge movement. This is a really heavy album, though. It's bordering on metallic, with standout tracks such as Rusty Cage. I love that song. And Somewhere is really good, and Outshine is probably the other track I would pick. Really good stuff, probably their heaviest album. It's definitely a must check out if you haven't heard it already. And it's their third studio album. Their breakthrough album wasn't until Super Unknown, which I really enjoyed as well. Was my gateway into Soundgarden. But I love all their stuff. They're more on the heavier side. Really good stuff. At number 6, I have Queen, Innuendo. This is their 14th studio album. Outside of the 70s material, this is my favorite Queen album. Love the cover art, love the title track. And the other standout tracks from this album would be, title track by far is the best. Headlong is really good. And I'm going Slightly Mad, I'd probably pick as well. But I love this album. They kind of went more back to their roots, a more heavier sound. Really good stuff. At number 5, I have Motorhead, 1916. Fucking love Motorhead. One of my favorite bands of all time. Super underrated album. This is their 9th studio album overall. Standout tracks would be The One to Sing the Blues, Going to Brazil, and No Voices in the Sky. Really underrated Motorhead album. Another band that's really consistent, and all their albums, in my opinion, are great. At number 4, I have Death with their album Human. Love Death. I knew all their albums would make my list. I love all their material. This is their 4th studio album. And standout tracks would be Flattening of Emotion, Suicide Machine, and Secret Face. Really solid stuff. Love Chuck. Rest in peace, brother. He was a genius, a master songwriter and guitarist. Crazy riffs. Sorely missed. At number 3, I'll get a lot of hate for this in the comments, but I don't give a shit. It's Nirvana, Nevermind. This album sums up my teenage years in one album. I listened to this album obsessively. I love it to this day. I have it on vinyl and CD. It's a killer album. Smells Like Teen Spirit is obviously their biggest song. In Bloom, Come As You Are, Breed, Lithium, Drain You. Like the whole song is just filled with hits. Love this album. I know metalheads hate it, but I fucking love it. It's definitely my top 10 albums of all year. I don't give a shit. It brings back so much nostalgia, and it's just my childhood summed up in one album, essentially. Before I got into metal, especially. That's why it's so high on my list. And at number 2, I have the mighty Sepultura, Arise. My second favorite Sepultura album is their 4th studio album overall. This one's just behind Beneath the Remains for me. Fucking love the Max era of Sepultura. Standout tracks would be this title track, Arise. Dead Embryonic Cells was really good too. And Subtraction. Really killer stuff. And before I list my number 1, I'll go through some honorable mentions. I have a list here on Wikipedia of all the albums of that year. I'm just going to kind of scroll through and name some albums that were really good. Then it didn't quite make the list. Let me see here. Corrosion of Conformity had Blind. Alice Cooper, Hey Stupid came out this year. Cancer, Death Shall Rise is a really solid album. Didn't quite make my list. Dark Angel, Time Does Not Heal was another really good one. Dismember had an Ever-Flowing Stream. Another really big one was Entombed with Clandestine. A big album as well. Love that album. Guns N' Roses had Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. I like some tracks from those. Immolation had Dawn of Possession. Morbid Angel had Blessed Are the Sick. Let me see here. Metal Church had The Human Factor. Massacre had From Beyond, a really solid album too that didn't quite make the list. Just very quickly, just kind of scrolling through here. Suffocation, Effigy of Forgotten. Ozzy Osbourne, No More Tears is worth mentioning. But yeah, that's about it for now, guys. I don't want to take too much time looking through this. Nuclear Assault had Out of Order. Some pretty solid stuff this year. My number 1, you probably could guess, because I haven't mentioned it yet, the Metallica Black Album. Again, this gets a lot of hate from people. I don't know why. A lot of people say Injustice for All was their cutoff point of great records. In my opinion, their first 5 records are killer. This is a masterpiece album, not even just for the songs, in my opinion, but what it meant to the metal community. It was the perfect bridge between underground metal and mainstream. It brought a lot of people like myself who listened to like pretty heavy music, but it kind of opened their eyes to the metal world. This is by far definitely the first Metallica album I ever heard. And then because of that, I went back and listened to all the other albums. And consequently, once I listened to Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, those classic albums, I spreaded my horizon into thrash. I checked out Sepultura, I checked out Testament, I checked out Slayer. And that's where my umbrella went out from for metal. So I owe everything I listen to now to this one album, essentially, in terms of the metal world. I don't care what people say. I think it's a masterpiece. The production is killer on it. The songs are still heavy, very thrashy, but just commercial enough to get some radio play and appeal to a larger audience. Obviously, Enter Sandman was the biggest song they've ever had. My personal favorites on this album, Sad But True, I love that song. The Unforgiven is really killer. And probably Don't Tread on Me. But with songs like Nothing Else Matters, like Wherever I May Roam, Holier Than Thou, like it's just loaded with great songs. It's one of those special albums that they just hit all the marks in the right places when they made this album. It's a very special album. It's up there with like Painkiller, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. It's one of those albums that's iconic and just sold a ton of shit to record. I'm not sure how much it sold, but I'd say over 30 million at least. It's killer. So let me know down below, guys, what you would pick of your 1991 options. And let me know what you thought of my selections. Like I said, I know most metalheads don't like grunge, but some of those key albums in grunge when I was growing up really brought back nostalgia, and I had to put them on my list because I still listen to them to this day, and I still love them almost as much. And yeah, pretty good year in the music. So a little mix of grunge and alternative and metal. And stay tuned for 1992 coming momentarily, probably the next week or two. And until next time, guys, keep it metal.